We're not here to talk about Snowpiercer.
No, we're here to talk about books and SJWs and freedom of speech.
Fuck yeah, are we going to talk about SJWs? Nobody fucking talks to me about that shit in interviews.
No, well, you and I are both writers, and we both make our living expressing ourselves freely and with no barrier, because we shouldn't need one. And now we have these people that are telling us that we need to use safe words and safe speech, and we can be accused of wrong think and thought crimes somehow just by
absolutely
just by using fiction, something that does not exist, that we come.
In fact, they only get outraged about fictional characters and fictional situations. Actual problems like the cell phones we're talking on right now are mined, the precious metals that are used to create them are mined by slave children in Africa. Nobody's fighting for the rights of the fucking slave children in Africa. They're fighting about whether or not the X-Men apocalypse sign is sexist or not. It doesn't matter. They're not real people. They're not real people. They're fake.
Yeah, and you get like one Hollywood celeb that validates that viewpoint, and all of a sudden, like, they're gun-ho on it. They completely leave logic at the door. They're like, well, Rose McGowan said it's sexist, so it must be sexist.
I've often wondered what Jennifer Lawrence really thinks about all this stuff, because she's been used twice now by the outrage culture and the PC police. Once for the fappening, where there were articles stating that she was literally raped by people downloading her naked pictures, and then again saying that the image of her being choked by Apocalypse was promoting domestic violence. Like, she's the go-to victim of that group. They roll her out anytime they need a victim. They need a fake, a victim for their nonsense.
Well, it's easier to use a celebrity to say this person is victimized, because almost everyone in America can relate. This is a person like us, because it's an American. It's a famous American, but it's someone from our country. But like what you said, when we look at someone that's being exploited outside the country, unless these sheltered college kids have actually been to that country and seen this firsthand, they don't care, because they cannot relate to it. It is something that's beyond their grip to deal with, and they're too lazy to make a real difference.
And it's like a cycle too, because since they're trapped in the bubble of safe spaces, they never encounter things that challenge their point of view, and they make sure that those things don't exist, that their point of view is never challenged. So they go from being high school age to college age to grown adults that have no idea what's happening in the actual world they live in. It's bizarre. And I have a lot of conversations about this stuff with people off the record. Most people won't talk to me about this kind of stuff on the record because, literally our reputations are at stake. Literally our livelihoods are at stake here, because the SJW culture, the PC police, will literally come after your family. They'll come after your job. They'll come after you any way they can to try to destroy your life if you talk publicly or say the wrong thing publicly, or definitely have conversations like what we're having right now. So a lot of people won't talk about it, publicly, but privately I have a lot of conversations about this stuff. And one of the things that I think is fascinating is that, and I talked with an author about this recently, is in Christian literature. I'm a horror fiction author, and in Christian literature, you have very defined parameters that you're allowed to write in if any of the Christian publishers are going to mess with you. So your characters can't cuss, they can't drink, they can't have sex. They're basically like Stepford wife characters, and the job in Christian fiction is for them to find heathens and sinners and save them. And then at the end of the book, usually Jesus comes back and saves everybody, takes them all to heaven. What we have now in secular fiction, all across the board, are Christian-like parameters that we're allowed to write with, that we're allowed to speak with. We're not allowed, as white men, we're not allowed to write women, and we're not allowed to write minorities because we're appropriating culture when we do that. Now, I personally ignore that. I just write whatever the fuck I want, but I also self-publish, and I don't have to worry about those kinds of people. Like, those kinds of people do come after me and attack me all the time. I just don't care. In certain circles, my reputation is complete shit because they've come after me for having these kinds of conversations. They call me a racist. They call me a bigot. They call me a sexist, and I'm none of those things. I live in St. Louis City, and I literally walked with the Michael Brown protesters and videotaped it for Facebook, and was completely vocal about the ills of police brutality. But that doesn't matter because I don't sort of stick to the line. I don't spout the rhetoric that's required of me. So therefore, I'm a racist just because.
It seems that you have to either be all in with their stack or you are a pariah. There's no middle ground. There's no logic. I mean, Stephen Fry can agree with them all day long, but the minute he says, well, I'm sorry that you had something that happened to you when you're a child, but being a perpetual victim just makes you unlikable, they suddenly go after him. Right. This is a man that has stood up for gay rights, stood up for freedom of speech, and the second they find something they don't like, they will drive him off of social media just because.
Right.
Why is there no middle ground, especially between people like us that rely on free speech to do what we do? Why are we not allowed to have a middle ground?
It's insane. I personally know editors at very influential publishing houses who have no tolerance for freedom of speech. And whenever I try to confront them with this, I say, listen, you are cutting off your own nose to spite yourself. If Amazon.com, when the whole rebel flag shit went crazy, I guess it was last year, or it's hard to tell. One thing rolls into another. It never ends. I think it was last year. Was it South Carolina, North Carolina? I don't even remember the details. I think it was North Carolina. They wanted the Confederate flag to come off the state house because of a shooting. A white kid shot up a black church, and in photographs he had a Confederate flag. So the whole SJW group and the PC police went after Confederate flags in general. And there was actually a moment, and I'm sure all this has been restored because people do these things to appease the PC police in the moment, but the PC police have no attention span, and they're on to the next outrage, just a couple of days later. But for a period of time, Amazon.com was actually pulling down video games, historical Civil War video games, featuring the Confederate flag on the cover, not in any kind of racial, no racial overtones whatsoever, just a historic cover on these phone games you could buy from Amazon were being pulled down. And I was having arguments with this influential editor at a publishing house going, motherfucker, you make your living off of Amazon.com. And if they come after you and want to take your books down, you're out of a fucking job. You're in the unemployment line, and you're right now telling me that those games shouldn't be there, that people shouldn't be allowed to display the Confederate flag because it's quote-unquote racist. We have to defend the things we don't like. It's easy to defend the things we do like. Freedom of speech doesn't come into play until suddenly there's something that is goes against our sensibilities, that goes against our morals, that goes against the way we were raised. It's those things that we have to fight to protect because of all the different points of view. In a country this big, with closing in on 400 million people, everybody's perspective is going to be different, and something is going to offend everyone, and we can't fucking ban everything. We can't, and a giant corporation like Amazon, when they come down, when they create, and again, these people will tell you it's not, this isn't censorship because the government isn't doing it. It doesn't violate the First Amendment because the government isn't doing it. It's a company. It's a privately owned company that has every right to not sell products that don't meet their guidelines or whatever. It's like, listen, Amazon is the biggest online retailer in the world, and the moment they decide to dictate morality, everything is gone. Everything you buy on the internet is now gone because a privately owned company has decided that they now dictate morality. That's fucking scary.
Well, it's similar to what happened with Milo when he was banned from Twitter. You can make the argument that Twitter's terms of service say freedom of speech, but we're a publicly traded company, but we can make the rules because you're on our forum. But at that point, when do you enforce these rules? When do you enforce this viewpoint that this person is being a problem, but then you have someone else from a different culture or a different skin color that does the same thing, but you're like, well, don't let them slide because that would be too much of a can of worms if we targeted this person over this person.
One of the craziest things about the PC police and the SJW culture is how tolerant they are of extreme Islam. When you have, and Twitter is a perfect example of allowing jihadists to communicate through their network, but banning Milo for calling an actress fat. It's I don't want the jihadists on there. That makes me uncomfortable. But I'm now Islamophobic if I express that concern that jihadists are communicating their terror plots through social media.
It's really frustrating because I want a private, or I want a business to be able to operate without being told what to do as far as what content it can and cannot have. But then you cannot say that we are for the freedom of expression as long as it fits within the certain narrative. And Twitter, I wouldn't be surprised if Twitter were to shut down within 5 years, if it continues on this path of being very selective on what it will and will not censor. And that could be the same with many companies now. I mean, Facebook, Tumblr's just SJW hell. But if they were to start saying, well, you're saying that all whites or all white men deserve to die, we should take you off, the backlash would be immense. Yeah. As opposed to if they took someone like you or me off for just saying, hey, I just want to write a story about this gay Islamist who gets fucked in the butt by Allah. Right. Nope, that person is gone. You cannot have that. But this person's saying kill all men, kill all white men. Right. No problem. No problem whatsoever. Freedom of speech. Covered.
Well, I think that, and I've been telling people this for a while, I think that that we're sort of, I think that these crazy people, their 15 minutes is up, and I believe that the culture of outrage and political correctness has sort of crested, and I see companies like Snapchat that now, I think I saw a stat last week that Snapchat now has more active users than Facebook, and one of Snapchat's key elements is privacy. Is when you message someone and they message you back, those messages disappear. They're not logged, they're not cataloged, they're not combed through for the purpose of advertising, which is on the surface is what they tell you it is, but they also grant immediate access to the government anytime law enforcement wants to come after someone. The type of companies like Facebook and Twitter and even Google, the minute that law enforcement comes and says, show me all the records, they just immediately roll over and do it. And all of your private, the stuff that's supposed to be private, the conversations that you have with your friends and even loved ones and even intimate conversations that you have are just handed over with no, and it's not that, the idea isn't that that stuff should be protected eminently, but that there should be a process, a court order. There should be, the justice system has sort of been circumvented by the internet, by companies like, and we don't care. I'm being scatterbrained here and kind of jumping from topic to topic, but we, all of our phone records have been turned over to the NSA numerous times by numerous people in office, and nobody cares. Democrats and Republicans alike, and we all just sort of shrug and say, well, we don't deserve privacy because we need protection. And those two things aren't mutually exclusive. We can have our privacy and we can be protected, and those things don't have to be opposing each other. We don't have to give up our freedom. We don't have to give up our privacy in order to be safer. Those two things can happen at the same time. And companies like Snapchat that are hugely popular social media platforms that everyone has on their phones go out of their way to try to protect your privacy as much as they can. And I think that this next generation that's coming up, we've gone through so many different waves. We've gone through so many waves of the internet. The original sort of mainstream push with AOL in the 90s, when everybody was on America Online, dial-up bullshit, hanging out in Yahoo chat rooms and stuff, and then Napster came along and destroyed the music industry. There was sort of a wave of people, and they're dying out now because the options have appeared. We have a lot of options now to download to download entertainment and to stream entertainment. But for a very certain age group that are right now around 25 years old, they will fist fight you if you tell them that that copying music or copying entertainment files and giving them to their friends is theft. Copying is not theft. It's a copy. The original is still there. They'll fight you for it. But the generation after them don't care about that. They don't. They're not trying to steal. They're not trying to steal things. You know, there was a whole generation of kids that felt like they were being rebellious by, I'm stealing all of me. I'm stealing video games. I'm stealing movies. They wanted to. They actively wanted to steal things. They wanted it to be an act of defiance against the entertainment industry. And today's kids don't give a shit. They stream everything on YouTube. They stream everything through Spotify or Pandora, and it's not. You know, they buy singles from iTunes for 99 cents, and this generation doesn't have a problem with that because the options appeared. And I think the same thing is true with the type of social media like Facebook that has been super invasive. It's requiring you to only post under your legal real name, full name, and you know, catalogs and documents your conversations and actually has software that combs through all of your conversations in order to put up advertisements specifically to you. We're sort of past that generation of people that accepted that, and we're getting back to, again, with newer technology, we have a generation that's coming up that they embrace privacy, and they embrace that they want their private lives back. These are kids that are coming up that they weren't part of that wave of people that jumped into social media head first and sort of declared that privacy no longer existed, and they, you know, send every moment of their life out into the world to be cataloged and used for advertisement purposes. Now, kids, they don't want that anymore. They do want their privacy. Whenever they do send messages back and forth to people, they want it to be confidential, and they want those things to go away and disappear after they say them, because that's nobody's business but you and the person you're talking to. So I think that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and I think that you know, I hear more. I was one of the first people that I knew in my circles that saw the social justice culture rising up, and people and PC police sort of trying to shout people down. And my, you know, first reaction was, don't fuck with my freedom of speech. Don't take my words away. This is what I do. This is my passion in life is creating, you know, fictional scenarios. And if you start confining me into, you know, start putting up walls and defining what I can and can't say, I can't do my job. And I was largely alone and made a lot of enemies being vocal about this through social media when it first started to bubble up. And I've noticed over the last, you know, really when I started noticing more voices on our side was after the what was his name on South Park, the PC principal. When South Park finally took a swing at it and satirized the PC culture, which is usually what it takes. It's usually to knock the fucking legs out from under some ridiculous cultural movement is to just satirize it through South Park, really. And once that happens, it kind of knocks the wind out of their sails. And I've noticed a lot more people have jumped. You know, there was no Milo a few years ago. He was around, and Breitbart was around, but they were very under the radar. And now, you know, I see probably 2 or 3 articles a day in Facebook's trending area that come right from Breitbart, that come right from Milo himself, because these people are, you know, our voices, the voices of what I consider common sense and reason and the moderation. You know, we have extremists on both sides, but we sort of I know I'm jumping around and just rambling here.
Yeah, it's all right.
We shouted down the Christian coalition in the 90s. They called it the Parent Television Council. These Christians that would try to come through, and they tried to take the violence out of wrestling on network television, and they tried to take sex out of television shows and all the sex and violence out of television shows and all that stuff. And we were able to shout them down without a lot of effort. They kind of got silenced, and then, you know, once Obama took office, the Christian right and the moral majority that they had have largely fallen away. They don't have a voice. They certainly don't have a big voice on social media. Social media is run by liberals, and they don't have they go out of their way to make sure that conservatives don't have a lot of power in those in social networks. What we have to fear is the extreme left. The extreme right got shouted down. Now the extreme left needs to be shouted down, and we need to find that moderate middle again. That common sense. Let bygones be bygones. Let everyone have their opinion, man. Don't label me, bro. We had it. I think we had it right in the 90s. I really think the slacker generation, Generation X, really had it right. I know I'm part of it, so I'm biased, but damn it, it makes sense. It's common sense. It's moderate. We didn't care what anybody thought. I didn't need to know all of your political beliefs. It's none of my business. Believe whatever you want to believe. Just let me believe whatever I want to believe. And we all got along.
It's interesting when we look back to, let's say, I really hate to, well, most people won't know this, but you probably will since we're Facebook friends. I posted a lot about Duckman and Duckman's rant about comedy and how it should challenge us. If you were to run on regular or with a large install base episodes of Duckman today, the SJW community would go insane just because of its content, just because it's crude, just because it does, quote unquote, objectify cartoon women. It shows a slob of a man or a duck. It's a loser that's just chasing tail and just making an ass of himself. But occasionally the writing is so good and so poignant, it's so far ahead of its time that when I see things like this where, well, you can't put this out there because it's demoralizing to this person or that person. But then what are you challenging if you're making everything bland and vanilla and flavorless? You're not challenging anyone anymore.
What it comes down to is this. If the slobby, tail-chasing, drunk duck with the crude mouth is so terrible, is such a bad example for how to live, then show it as big and loud as you can, because if the only thing we need to censor, the only thing we feel compelled to hide from each other and to hide from our kids are things we're afraid of. If he's so bad, if that type of lifestyle is so bad, there's nothing to fear. Show it all you want. Broadcast it as a warning. Don't live like this, or don't make these decisions, or you'll turn out like this guy. By hiding that stuff, by trying to censor that stuff and put that stuff away from, to, like you said, to not challenge ourselves with those ideas, we just make them more powerful. We make those ideas more powerful. And what we're doing, what we're doing is we're creating a group of people in the Midwest. Is what I tell people. We're creating conservative Christians that are going to be the mutant, fucking giant, superpowered version of the Christian right we had in the 90s. And we're going to see them in about 10 more years. They're going to grow up, and they're going to be so fucking awful, and they're going to be every SJW's worst fucking nightmare because they had to go find offensive things. They had to go find things that went against SJW and PC police sensibilities. They had to find them, and they had to look at them in the dark, in secret. And those types of ideologies grow in secret. They grow in the darkness, and they get more and more powerful by having to and they grow sexier to kids by being shrouded in mystery, by having to be talked about in hushed tones. That's how you get giant fucking groups of neo-Nazis in the fucking Northwest. You've seen that movie Green Room, right?
Yeah.
The reason that took hold was they were able to sit up there in secret. Those neo-Nazis were able to sit up there in secret and plan and do all the things that they do in that culture. That movie is just based around a culture that really does exist there. They were able to do it all in secret. And I think that we're growing a fucking group like that in the Midwest that's going to be awful. They're going to be impossible to deal with. And guys like you and me who sit in the middle, we're going to have to start fighting those guys in 10 years. We're going to have to start telling those people that they can't have their totalitarian fucking hands around our necks, telling us what that God is going to smite us all and the horrible things that the Christian right likes to do with their religion. It's going to be scary, and it's all it's going to be a direct result of the left telling people what they can and can't see and hear.
It it'll be an amped up version of the Satanic Panic. You will have people's lives completely destroyed over allegations. Because you'll have this group that'll have such a voice and such numbers that they'll easily be able to say, well, this person did this. I mean, we're saying it, so it must be true. The SJWs do that as well. They can completely ruin someone's life with an accusation where you are guilty until you're proven innocent. I don't know. It's irritating.
What they think they're doing, though, they think that they're tap dancing on the grave of the Christian right, of the conservative right. But really, they're just incubating. Those people haven't gone anywhere, man. They haven't converted anybody. None of those people are any different. They're just quiet now. They're quiet because social media doesn't let them say what they want to say, and they're angry and they're bitter and they're going to come after us. They're going to come after all of us. You and me, tattooed guys that are into heavy metal and are into horror movies and stuff. We're in the fucking 90s, I was called a fag and I was called a pussy and all the shit that I was, put through by the right, I get accused by the left of being a bigot, a racist. The real bigots and the real racists used to fuck with me because I was too much of a fucking liberal.
Well, it's kind of sad that I can no longer really say that I have liberal views without it feeling like it's a dirty word now.
There's guys like Milo and Milo's a crazy, he's a troll, and he calls himself a conservative. He calls himself a Christian, but really he's with us. Guys like Dave Rubin are with us. These guys, there are two lefts now. There's the moderate left and there's the extreme left, and it's hard to call ourselves liberals because people, we look like these people. These people have dyed hair and tattoos, and they wear band T-shirts and shit, but they're awful people. They're terrible people, and they sort of co-opted our look and our style from the 90s and took it on as their own for whatever, God knows why. I was so frustrated for the longest time from like 2012 to 2014. I would be looking for, like-minded people on social media, and I would add these people with dreadlocks, and I would add people that wear Misfits shirts and have cool tattoos, and they would turn out to be the biggest fucking PC douchebags. I'm like, what is happening? Was it me? What happened to people who look like me? And these people co-opted our fucking look and style. And it's hard to sit here and say, I'm a liberal, but I really am. I really am a liberal. I'm not the kind of liberal I'm not a vegan. I'm not going to hug a tree, but I'm a moderate liberal. I support fucking abortion. I support gay rights. I absolutely love the fact that gay people get married now. I say this all the time. I spent the fucking 1990s in gay bars watching drag shows, and rednecks would drive by and throw fucking bottles at us as we fucking walked out the door, call us all fags. Mm-hmm. And yet the left calls me a fucking homophobe because I stick up for the things that are hard to stick up for. Because I stick up for the right of guys to fucking drive down the street with rebel flags hanging off the back of their cars. I don't fucking like it, but I know that it has to be there. It has to be there so that we can all be free to say and do what we fucking please. Because if you take away the things you don't like, everybody takes everything away from everyone else. And we live in a fucking dystopian future where we're all wearing gray T-shirts and we fucking walk down a fucking conveyor belt and we all do the same fucking job. They've made movies about this shit since the fucking 1950s.
But it seems to range from state to state. Like here in Florida, we seem to be kind of insulated from most of this. We had a couple BLM protests, which were rightfully so. I mean, there were some actions done by the police that required it, but they were very small protests. They didn't get out of hand. You didn't see SJWs en massing and yelling at the cops and throwing things at them and taking over campuses and asking for people to get fired because they had the wrong mindset. But then the further north and west you go, it seems to just grow and get worse. And then once you hit California, it's all out hell.
Yeah. California, Oregon, Washington, it's just, that's the SJW fucking headquarters.
It feels like the further you get from diversity, the more of this SJW activity you see. But then once you hit California, they just throw everything out the window because just like Florida, it's a big melting pot of people. So I don't understand the California lifestyle and how how it becomes that kind of boiling point of everything's offensive and everything's, that whole Anita Sarkeesian line about everything being bad, and you have to point it out.
A lot of it has to do with we can be as diverse as we want to be in real life. None of these people are living in real life. They're living on their phones in coffee shops, sitting around other young white people, calling white people racist on the internet. It's bizarre. It's truly bizarre what the little world, the little bubble they've created for themselves, because they aren't diverse. You don't see a big, diverse group of people hanging out together. You see a bunch of college-age white kids calling everybody racist, calling everybody bigots, calling everybody homophobes. Mm-hmm. You know, I have and everybody, you know, this is a tried and true phrase that people use to defend themselves when they are being bigots. But I have a large diverse group of friends. I have gay friends, I have trans friends, I have black friends, I have Asian friends, I have friends from all kinds of cultures that live on every point of this planet. Friendships that I've made over the course of my life, especially once my career, you know, started taking off in the mid-2000s, and I met a whole lot of people. And the people that my friends that are gay, my friends that are trans, my friends that are minorities, we don't fucking sit around and talk about the fact that they're different from me. They don't care that I'm a white dude, and they don't care that I'm straight, and I don't care that they're gay. I don't care that they're black. That has nothing to do with what we have in common. That has nothing to do with what drew us together as human beings. And that's what the SJW culture misses. They're so busy objectifying, you know, they say we objectify women. They objectify, you know, cultural standards. They're the ones that are so hyper aware of everyone's differences. Instead of, you know, if they would stop pointing out everyone's differences and start looking for the things that draw us together, there are way more things that draw human beings together that we can relate to. We relate to 99% of each other's life experience, of our experience here on this fucking planet, and 1% of us is different. We have a different religious view, or we have different skin color, or we have different cultural values, but those things are largely small in comparison to the things that we have in common with each other. And it's so easy to find things we can communicate to each other about and share the experiences of life together. And these people go out of their way to find the differences and define the differences and they force this narrative that if you're black, you have to have a different experience than me. And I'm white. I have to have a different experience from you. We can't come together. We can't mutually experience this planet, 99% of which is the same perspective. That 1% that makes us different, the way we experience life, in, you know, the way we experience reality, 1% of that experience is different, and the SJW culture forces us to only focus on that 1% difference. It's ridiculous, and again, it goes against common sense. Common sense shows that we are all human beings, and we can all get along. There's no reason to divide ourselves. I don't sit with my gay friends and have to analyze why they like dudes and why I don't. It doesn't matter. We're not having sex together. The only difference we have is that we have sex with he has sex with dudes and I have sex with chicks, and as long as we don't talk about that, and we can even share our experiences. That's another thing about the Generation X from the 1990s is we don't give a fuck. We are what truly is considered open-minded. You can talk to me about fucking dudes all day long. It doesn't offend me. It doesn't gross me out. I don't care. It's just not something that I do. I can't get a boner for dudes. That's it. Period. That's all. That's the only difference I see between me and gay people is they get boners for something different than I do. That's the only fucking difference.
It's such a minute point because at the end of the day, what does their sex life have to do with you on a daily basis?
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. It's the same with anyone else that I ever deal with. It's what you do behind your closed doors. I don't care. Do we get along as people when we have to interact with each other? Great, fine, perfect. Let's move on. No issue. But I think I have non-religious Muslim friends. The only difference between them and me is I was raised in a Christian house and they were raised in an Islamic house, and that's it. Mm-hmm. We're exactly the same. We live in the same city. We're the same age. We like the same things.
There's no difference between us at all. And yet you would, if you believe the SJW internet culture, we're at each other's throats. I can't get along. I was raised Christian. I'm a white straight guy. There's no way I could get along with a Muslim dude unless I'm wrapping a scarf around my head and going to mosque with them. Is the only way. I have to shut up and know my place if I'm around a Muslim guy. No, there's no, we can appreciate each other's cultural diversity, and those two things don't ever have to cross over. I don't have to worship his religion, and he doesn't have to worship mine. He doesn't have to come to Christian church with me. I don't have to go to mosque with him. There's no reason we can't be friends otherwise.
No, what they don't understand is culture and community is what's going to make these people like each other and get along. It's when you have an outside culture that comes in, a radical outside culture comes in. There's where you have your issues. But just because people have different religions, if they're all in the same community, they're part of that community. They're part of each other. So it doesn't matter what their differences are because they are part of a community. You're not going to have these. You're not going to have these social justice warrior issues if you just go into a diverse community and just look around. You're going to see everyone interacting with each other. When you bring in an outside radical element into it, there's where you have those issues, and there's where you get that divide where SJWs say, "Well, you're being Islamophobic," or "You're being whatever."
Yeah, the 20-year-old white kid from college. The 20-year-old white kid from college comes down to the fucking the restaurant district and starts telling all of us how we're different from each other. Mm-hmm. Fuck that. They don't care about the personality differences. They don't care about the academic differences or the mentality differences. They are strictly looking at what color is your skin and what gender are you. That is it. That is their basis for these arguments they have. I think I'm trying to think if it was Crowder that said it during some on-campus meeting or some on-campus presentation with him and Milo, where a SJW asked, "Well, how can you say that you're for diversity or you're for whatever if you don't have a black person up there with you?" They said, "Well, we have people that have different viewpoints, political and religious, up here together talking to each other. The only thing you seem to be caring about is what color skin we have." Which is the most intolerant thing. That's the thing. It very much reminds me, and you'll remember this from the 90s, is you would have these cornbread, Republican, Christian, praise the Lord senators that would get up on their pulpit. They would go to Washington and talk about how they were gonna make all these laws banning, they were gonna uphold the laws to ban gay marriage in the 90s. They were going to, they were going to enact new, more strict sodomy laws, and they were very, super anti-gay, super homophobic. And those same dudes would get caught in glory holes sucking dicks.
Yep.
This reminds me of the same. It reminds me of the same thing. These super hypocritical Christians, when they had the moral majority, the people that had the biggest spotlight on them were the biggest hypocrites. And it comes from this mentality of those guys. What they were doing was they were saying, "Well, fuck, I'm from a community that really doesn't like that I like to suck dick, so therefore I can't suck dick. But I really love dick." Mm-hmm. So, as they work through this logic in their brains emotionally, as they're trying to come to these emotional terms with, "I love dick, but nobody around me wants me to do it." They tell me it's bad, and they'll ostracize me socially if I do it in front of them. So, okay, I'm not going to be gay. The best way I can not be gay is if there are no dicks around me at any time. Everybody, get your dicks away from me. I can't suck dicks anymore. This is bullshit. You wave your beautiful big dicks around my face, and all I want to do is suck them. Got to get them away from me. And so they go to Washington and they start trying to enact these laws to keep gay people, to oppress gay people. And they do that so they're not tempted to indulge in their true feelings. And when I see crazy people, the crazy SJW people that do exactly what you're saying, I see people that fear that what they feel inside, the hatred and bigotry that they feel inside, they think if they shout it down and they tell you and me, you you can't be racist. You know that's bullshit that you don't support Black Lives Matter. They are really trying to suppress their own feelings, and they believe if they can eradicate all of the cultural diversity in the world, that they won't fear those types of cultures. I know, I don't like talking about this, but I know girls that in the 90s were cool as fuck. Were into super raunchy sexual stuff. And as the SJW movement grew more and more powerful and picked up steam, they became crazed feminists. I'm talking the armpit hair growing, you're a sexist.
Blue hair, short haircut.
Blue hair, short haircut. The patriarchy rules the planet. And I realized these girls love to get fucked and talked dirty to and love to be humiliated sexually. And this is they're just like the gay dudes that become Christians and go to Washington and try to abolish dicks from their faces. These women love dicks so much. They love to get fucked so bad, but they want to be empowered. They believe that they love to, they're in the bedroom. They love to have their power taken away from them. They love to be overpowered by men, but in their daily life, they want to be strong. They want to be looked at as I'm your equal. You can't push me around. You can't talk to me like that anywhere else. I like it in the bedroom, but don't do it anywhere else. And this is their overreaction. Their overreaction of calling me a member of the patriarchy and that I'm culturally oppressing women. No, I'm not. I was raised by a single mother. I was raised by a strong fucking woman who worked her ass off 12, 14 hours a day to make sure there was food on the table for me. I know what a strong woman looks like, and I know how to respect a woman. I know how to respect the bullshit about women being paid less than men and all that. If women were really paid less than men in this country, we live in corporate America. Corporations would only hire women because they would be able to pay lower paychecks. They would be able to, you go into any restaurant, you go into Walmart, and there's 28 lines, but only 2 of them are open. That's how worried they are about payroll. That's how worried they are about overhead. If you're telling me women get paid less, then everyone in that store would be women. So anyway, all that is to say that I believe that the whole culture of SJW craziness and PC police craziness all comes from a place of insecurity and fear in themselves. They don't know how to interact with this world in a way that previous generations that didn't live on the internet just sort of figured out on our own. We sort of had to figure out our internal feelings and how to sort of come to terms with what happens outside and what happens inside of ourselves. And we have a culture of kids that grew up living on the internet and isolating themselves from other human beings, and they never really learned as kids. As kids, guys like you and me, we rode our bikes till it was dark outside. We went all across town. We had crazy fucking adventures, and we probably nearly died 100 times over. It only live because kids' bodies are really fucking sturdy. They're really hardy, and they can get beat up a lot. But kids now don't know that. Everybody's doughy and round and pale because we all just sit on the internet, and we haven't learned how to deal with bullies. We haven't learned how to deal with our sexual feelings. We haven't learned, the whole generation of kids hasn't learned how to do any of that. They don't know how to overcome adversity. They don't know how to lose. It's a whole generation of kids that don't know how to lose and know and understand how to go home and train harder and study harder and get better at something when they're not good at it. They just know that they're supposed to be the superstar. They're the rock star of their life. They have a Facebook page with 5,000 friends. They're the winner in every moment of their life. They don't know any differently.
They'll never learn from failure, and they consider failure a dirty word when in fact failure is how you learn to do better.
It's the only way you learn how to do anything.
Yeah, by always getting a gold star, you're not learning anything. You are simply being taught that whatever you do is golden.
Is good enough. Whatever you do is good enough. And that's not how you grow human beings that can communicate with each other. And that's why you have this crazy culture. You have this crazy culture of people that don't get it. And it's so hypocritical. This hypocrisy, they don't know how to deal with it. They don't know how to handle the emotions they feel inside, and they've never lived life properly. And I used to make fun of these kids. I used to say, when these kids, get out of school, they're going to be helpless. Well, they didn't turn helpless. They turned to the internet, and they got on Twitter, and they became social justice warriors, and they have a whole fucking movement that ruins lives. I never saw that coming. Never saw it coming.
It's a lot of projection. It seems that they have this internalized feeling or misplaced feeling of guilt. And being on social media, it gives them the outlet to be a quote unquote hero, like they're doing something when they're doing nothing. It's like prayer.
Yep.
You're not doing
Absolutely.
anything.
There's so many so many ways to correlate the extreme left with the extreme right. It's absolutely the same, It's just like going to, I grew up in a terrible church, and I actually witnessed grown adults that were supposed to be the mentors and role models in my life laying hands on a little retarded girl, thinking they were going to pray the mental illness out of her. Mm-hmm. These were the adults. These were the decision makers in my life. These were the people I was supposed to look to as I grow up and as I start handling the difficulties of adult life. These are the people I'm supposed to go to and say, hey, how do I overcome this? This is hard. Being an adult is hard. Trying to run my life, trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my life, and trying to figure out how all this works. It's really hard. I have these people that are literally just saying, I'll just pray about it. It'll be fine. But you're fucking fooling yourselves. And it's the, and like you said, it's just, people projecting their fears, and they are miserable. I mean, it's well documented that these, armpit hair growing, blue haired, crazy feminists, they're miserable human beings. They're not experiencing any joy in life. They're just trying to make sure nobody else does either. They're trying to make sure everybody else is as miserable as they are.
Yeah. I can attest to that. I mean, I can freely admit that I was on the SJW bandwagon for a few years because I would see stories, and even though I'm not religious in a sense, I've been a practicing Buddhist for many years, so I empathize with people a lot. And when I see a story like this person is being treated badly because of their sex or because they're transgender or because of their skin color, I immediately feel empathy for them, and I'm the kind of person that'll get worked up to a point where I will say something without researching it all the way. And then I started to reel that back, and I thought, I'm not being a skeptic anymore like I used to. I'm just taking these stories as fact without even thinking about them. And then when you start to look at these stories, like, why are we persecuting this person for saying this? Just because they said it, why are we allowing these groups of SJWs to actively dox and ruin people's lives and get them fired simply because they told an off-color joke or they said something about dongles? Why are we allowing this? This is not progress. This is not being progressive. This is being regressive. This is going back to the era when we were so scared of communists that we'd start whisper campaigns to get someone fired from a job by just saying, well, I saw that they thought this way about this person, or they might be a sympathizer for the commies. You better look into that, wink, wink. And all of a sudden that person...
It's McCarthyism. It's absolutely modern McCarthyism. It's neo-McCarthyism.
But it's even more powerful now because of the reach of social media. They are basically the religious right of the 40s and 50s with trying to censor stuff now by trying to take comic books away.
In the groups, the social circles that I run in with the small press horror and bizarro fiction that I write, I was first targeted with that kind of behavior when I stuck up for the Duck Dynasty fellow who did an interview completely separate from his television show. He just did an interview, I forget with what magazine, in his own private time in his own home on the phone, much like you and me are talking right now. And he was asked about what his views, that they started talking about how he was religious and started talking about Christianity and started talking about the Bible, and he was then asked his views about homosexuals. And he gave his views, which are stupid, but he was then suspended from his television show for a conversation he had in the privacy of his own home. And yes, it was a public interview. I understand that, but it didn't have anything to do with the show. He wasn't even on the air. Right? It was just an interview with a magazine somewhere that a handful of people was going to read. He was suspended from his job, and I flipped out. I was like, look, I don't agree with this fucking guy at all. I grew up in that environment, and those people fucking suck, and I got away from them as fast as I could, but I'm not trying to get them fucking fired from their jobs. That's ridiculous. That's fucking censorship. That's fucking. This is Orwellian censorship. And that whole group, shouted me down, called me a homophobe because I was defending the rights of a homophobe. Here's the thing. Again, and I tried to explain to them at the time, I'm like, no, you guys gotta listen, you gotta understand. It's really easy to defend your own viewpoint, but it's the other person's viewpoints that you don't agree with. That's why you have an amendment to the Constitution specifically granting freedom of speech, because it's really difficult to do that. It's really difficult to say, hey, I disagree with you, but go ahead and keep talking, bro. It's hard to do that. So it's so hard that we have to have government intervention in our lives that tells us, no, you have to let that happen. And yet, again, the SJW culture tries to get around that by saying, well, the company that owns Duck Dynasty is a privately held company, and he's not going to jail for his views. He's getting fired. Ha, ha, ha. So, and to me, the difference between government censorship and cultural censorship is you're talking semantics. If you can't make a living, if your name and your brand and your humanism is it's like Salem witch trials. If you're branded a fucking witch, or you have an adulterer A sewn into your clothes, or you have a Jewish star, sewn onto your clothes, that it doesn't matter if the government's doing it or the community's doing it. You're still being ostracized. You're still being excommunicated, and that's not okay. It's not okay to excommunicate people just for having thoughts. Just for having opinions. It's not okay. And to me, there's no difference between it being okay if the government comes in and does it or if your job comes in and does it. Fuck that. Fuck firing me because of the fucking opinions I hold. He didn't hurt anybody. He didn't actively stop any gay people from doing anything. He was asked a question and he answered it honestly, and he lost his job because of it. I think they ended up reinstating him really soon. Again, these people have such such short attention spans. They don't even talk about that guy anymore. Who cares about that guy? That was 2 years ago, 3 years ago. That's ancient news to SJWs. But they end up giving the job back. It's a lot of times this stuff only happens temporarily in order to appease the crazy torch holding angry flash mob, but it still happens. It still happens.
It's a very vocal minority that are able to get these huge shifts done, because the company worries, like, well, if this keeps on brewing on social media, eventually it might affect our sponsors in some way. It might affect our wallet. But I was part of that whole rage culture as well when that happened. I was one of those assholes. But as I grew as a person, I started to realize this is really stupid. This person's religious beliefs, even though they might be bigoted, they might be stupid, they are his beliefs, and he is allowed to have them, and he can voice them in the same way.
And you've got to let people be stupid. You've got to let people be stupid and show them as an example. Show your kids, hey, you see that idiot that's talking right there? Don't listen to him. He's an idiot. Look at him. He's fucking stupid. When you silence it, now your kid's going, why can't I say that? Why can't I call people fags, Dad? Oh, because it's wrong. Don't you ever say that in my house, or get out of my house. It's just like heavy metal music in the fucking 80s. Like you said earlier, you drew the comparison to the Satanic Panic. When you tell people they can't do something, that's what they're fucking drawn to. And by martyring the guy from Duck Dynasty, instead of just calling him an idiot, saying, that guy's fucking dumb, listen to him, listen to the dumb things he says, and your kid laughing at him with you, when you take him away and say, oh, don't talk about that guy. Don't talk about that guy. It's just like grandma telling you, don't you listen to that music, and taking your CDs and throwing them away and burning them and telling you can't listen to fucking Black Sabbath and shit. That's all you want to do. Then you end up with fucking stupid band tattoos on your body for the rest of your fucking life because because that thing's sexy, because your family tells you can't do it. The authority figures in your life try to take something away from you, and that's not how you have to champion the right ideas. You can't ban the wrong ideas. It's just going to make them sexy to kids.
And by giving into the demands that someone get fired, whether it be a social justice warrior or someone on the religious right, you are showing them that they have the power to make a change that significantly. Like look at the creepy peeper thing, Halloween decoration that was at Home Depot or Lowe's, took down because one Canadian mom complained.
One on social media made a big deal out of it.
Yes. So you have this single person can make such a drastic change in a multinational corporation. And that gives people this little hard-on where like, well, maybe I can make a change too, and I can have my 15 minutes of fame for censoring or making a change that is going to be on a huge scale. And then they'll start doing
that's what I mean
mundane shit.
That's what I mean when I say that to me, it's just semantics. When you talk the difference between a government censorship and a giant global fucking corporation like Lowe's or Amazon, it's a giant global organization telling you can't do something. It's not, it doesn't happen on a fucking small scale. It's not like it's not Bob's Bakery on the corner of 5th and 3rd fucking telling you can't do something. These are giant fucking corporations. These are unprecedented entities that have never existed in the history of our fucking species that are handing down moral mandates. It's not something you can brush away by saying, well, this is privately owned company. No, this is unprecedented. It's unprecedented for Amazon.com to make a moral judgment on a product. It's unprecedented.
And now it's about whose morals are better. I was watching the Young Turks. I think it was a few weeks ago, and Anna Kasparian went on about how she is better morally than people that either shitpost or follow Trump or make a Pepe meme or don't agree with her on certain either gay rights or abortion laws or something. She just sat there, a woman who prides herself on bringing you news in an unbiased fashion in a way that other corporate news outlets don't, sat there and told the audience that she is better than you if you do not hold the same opinion as her.
Right.
That is not a progressive viewpoint. That is no different than censoring non-Christian voices. It's insanity. Now it's
no different than it's no different than Jack Van Ippy on late night television. Handing down his moral. And they this is the left having the moral high ground, where the right had the moral high ground in the 90s, and these people would tell you the same thing. I used to go. I was a fucking asshole in high school. I used to go to the morning Christian meetings in high school and argue and debate Christians, and I would go in there and say, I'm a Satanist and I have religious freedom to be here. You can't specifically have a meeting that's one religion. That's not how this works in a public school. You have to let me be here too. I'm a Satanist and I have my say too. And I would argue with people, and it would all come down, and those people didn't understand what LaVeyan 1980s LaVeyan Satanism was. And I would try to educate people about, Satan doesn't exist, and blah, blah, blah. It's a religion of worshiping self and all the dumb stuff that that comes along with LaVeyan Satanism. But what it would always come down to was, even after I explained my belief system, even after I explained that it's just a humanist sect, they would just take the moral high ground. Well, our morals are better than yours. We care more about people than you do. We're trying to save lives. We're trying to save souls for all eternity. So our morality is better than your morality. That's what it would come down to. No matter what, I would sit and argue with them, and we would, after school, I would go to IHOP and argue with the Christians that would go to IHOP after church. I would sit and have discussions and arguments with them, and I never won an argument with any Christian because they just never conceded the moral high ground. And it's the same thing with SJWs. This conversation that we're having will never get through to an SJW because they just believe that they're morally superior to us.
They don't want to believe that there is complexity in the world and people, that people can hold multiple different conflicting viewpoints because
Absolutely.
We are complex.
That two things that don't mesh up can both be believed at the same time. And it's what I tell people about the Black Lives Matter stuff. Again, I lived through Michael Brown. My Schnucks that I shopped for my dinner at night, I went to Schnucks and there were 85 cops posted in the parking lot, and Schnucks was shut down because the Black Lives Matter protest was coming through the city, and they were mobilizing their giant fucking trucks with the sound weapons, and they were fucking standing there in their riot gear with their fucking paintball guns with tear gas in them, ready to take this mob down. This happened literally in my backyard, and Yet I'm the guy that's going to tell you, yeah, there's a problem with police brutality. There's also a fucking problem with crime. There's a big fucking problem with crime. And to try to ignore that our communities are under attack from drug users and drug dealers, and that violent crime is out of control in these communities, and the reason Michael Brown was shot was because those cops have to fight off criminals with guns every day, and that cop made the wrong decision at the wrong time. He fucked up, and he should have been punished for it, and he wasn't. It's a community-wide problem. It's a racist police department, but those communities are also super violent. Those two things exist at the same time. At the same time, we have a problem with violent communities and we have a problem with police brutality. Right alongside each other. One side isn't right and wrong. It's two problems. Two problems existing together.
But it's easier to focus on this one hotbed topic than to look at the general issue overall. Because how do we hashtag please don't kill people to the black community? How do we get the St. Louis ghetto to get on Twitter and see the please don't kill people hashtag? It's not possible. You can't do that. But you can hashtag Black Lives Matter and try to shame the white kids on social media to whatever it is that they want us to do. They want us to just be really, really sorry that we're white. And I've never lived in a violent community, so I really can't speak about it. So that's why I kind of keep my mouth shut. I can't speak to what you see on a daily basis or what anyone from the African American community sees in these kind of neighborhoods. I don't know. So I can't make any sort of morale call. I can't say, well, if you did this, it would be better. If you did that, it would be better. I don't know. I'm not engaged with that community. But then to actively shame me because of the color of my skin and where I live and how much money I make, that doesn't solve any situation. That just ostracizes people who are willing to empathize with you.
Yep.
You're causing more of a divide by saying that because you're different, you cannot understand at all what I go through. Well, then talk to us. Let's have a debate. Let's learn together. Let's not just separate each other just based on petty differences.
Right. What's really telling about the Black Lives Matter movement and where it's come from and what it's evolved into is you had, I don't know if you watched any of the live streaming stuff that was going around at the time when Michael Brown was killed and the riots were happening in Ferguson, but there was a kid on the ground named Tim Pool. And Tim Pool was in the middle of the shit. He's a journalist. He's been all over the world, and he's been to Pakistan. He's been all over the place covering violent uprisings. He's the guy that handles violent uprisings. He's worked for Vice before. He gets in the middle of the shit. He was dodging bullets in Ferguson when that shit was going down. What was the latest city? Minneapolis was the latest city that erupted from a cop killing a unarmed black guy. I think it was Minneapolis. Well, Dave Rubin ended up having, or was it Dave Rubin or was it someone else?
It was Rubin, because I hadn't seen anything on his channel regarding that, really.
It was either Rubin or it was the Alex Jones show, but it wasn't Alex Jones. I think it might have been the guy that handles stuff when he's not there. They brought him on. They brought Tim Pool on. Tim Pool actually left Minneapolis because the crowd was chanting "Kill all white people." And Tim Pool's a white kid. And they were chanting "Kill all white people," and they were literally trying to whip up the crowd into just going and attacking people for their skin color. And he left, and he no longer supports the Black Lives Matter movement. He's disavowed himself from it, and he won't go back into those communities and cover the real problems of police brutality that really exist there because he's afraid for his own life because he's white. That's where we've come. That's where we've come. One of the biggest allies that was standing up against police brutality is too scared to cover it now.
But I wonder how much of that is actually the community that comes in and riles that up, or if that's actually outside agitators that just go because it is now
almost always outside agitators. It's almost always outside agitators. And the same thing was said about Ferguson when it was happening here, was people were commenting like, I don't know these people. These people that are throwing Molotov cocktails into our, because the people from the conservative side were saying, these animals, these thugs, burning their own communities. What sense does this make? But if they paid any attention, the people in the communities were saying, I don't know the people throwing Molotov cocktails. I don't know these people. They're coming in from somewhere else. And these people were just coming in from all over the place. They said, there's shit going down. Let's go fuck shit up. And it is. It's just people with that anarchist attitude that just want to go fucking destroy shit. It's not it's not people from the block that are destroying their own block. That doesn't make any sense. And it's not those people. They're not destroying their own community. It's just people see a community being destroyed. There's certain types of people that just want to go and help destroy it.
And they further degrade any kind of conversation you're going to have about how to improve relations.
Yep.
And no one looks, and they've actually won, because our race relations are probably the worst they have been in decades.
The worst I've ever seen. I always tell people I think the best our race relations in this country ever got was when Dave Chappelle was on television. Dave Chappelle would take shots at every culture. He took shots at Asian drivers. He took shots at Latinos. He took shots at white people every show. And then he also took shots at black people, and he made fun of the black community. And I remember I worked at a video store in the early 2000s, and it was me and two black kids that had come in to rent movies. And I had the Chappelle Show on television, and we were both laughing. All three of us were laughing at all the jokes. When he would make a skit when the skit was about black people being dumb, they were laughing. And when it was about white people dumb, I was laughing. We were all laughing together, and I felt like for the first time that our communities were more similar than they were different. And I felt like race relations were at the peak, like the best they've ever been. And then it's just slowly been, they're terrible now. Like, they're really bad. Like that same Chinooks I told you about that had the police all staged in it. When that was happening, there was one night in particular I can remember where I walked in and I was walking behind a couple, a black dude and his wife, and I went to walk around them, and the guy saw me out of the corner of his eye, and he said, "Hey, move back," to his wife, and her response was, "I ain't moving for no cracker." As I was just walking by him, and I just felt, and that was the worst I've ever felt. So there was the one instance where that was the best I had ever felt race relations were, and then I just felt like such a piece of shit. I just felt like I didn't belong there just because of the color of my skin. And what am I supposed to say? What am I supposed to turn to her and say, I'm not the guy calling you all thugs. I'm not the guy calling all black people monsters for destroying. I'm not that guy. I'm the guy on your side. I'm trying to raise awareness about police brutality, just like you are. There's no one there to listen. They just hated me because of the way I looked. Just assumed I was a terrible person.
We have voices on both sides that are just turning everyone into a villain. No matter what, yeah. You're not going to be able to be a good guy because we're saying, well, it's white people do this or black people do this. Now we're just looking at it as color instead of looking at it as people. And as long as we have these outlets on both sides saying that it's definitely this type of person's fault or it's this type of person's fault, you're never coming to a common ground and saying, let's look at the issue as a whole. What is causing the issues in this community? We're not looking at this saying, well, it's all the black people or it's all the white people. Let's just look at what is causing it. What is the underlying socioeconomic problem? And let's try to fix it.
The thing is, that can't be broken down into a hashtag. It used to be, you used to say that it can't be broken down into a sound bite to be used on cable news, but now cable news is dead and it's now social media, and on social media all we care about is a hashtag. All we care about is trending a hashtag.
It's about getting the clicks.
Yeah.
That was something I really liked about that was something I really liked about the Young Turks long ago, is it wasn't about being hip to what is trending. It was about, here's the news, here are the points, we have a little bit more of a liberal bias, but we're not going to go apeshit about it and say that everyone to the right is the enemy. But now, currently, now it's, well, Republicans do this and liberals are up here on this moral high ground. Like, not all Republicans, not all progressives are built the same, motherfucker.
Right.
Jesus Christ.
Right.
You're just, like I keep saying, you're causing a divide instead of looking for a common ground. But now it's just about who is up there on that moral high ground. Who can say that my morals are better than your morals and get the most attention for it?
Like I've been saying, it's the only way we're ever going to get sanity back in this culture is to go to the middle and to the pendulum. We got to stop it from swinging back and forth. All we have to do is reach out and grab it. and we can stay in the center. And that happened in the 90s. That happened in the early 90s, and I think it can happen again. And again, I'm biased because I grew up in the early 90s, but tell me that wasn't a great time. That was just a fantastic time. It felt like everybody was sort of on the same page, and it's gotten insane. And I feel like it's swung so far to the left, like I was saying earlier. I feel like the next thing is going to be a swing super far to the right. Like, we're not going to escape this. We're not going to shout down the SJWs and find peace and happiness. We're going to shout down the SJWs and then deal with the goddamn conservative bullshit all over again. And that could happen with Trump. That could happen that could start happening as early as next year. If Trump gets in office and the conservatives take power and he starts dropping all kinds of fucking crazy legislation, especially if, Republicans have been in control of they've had the majority in Congress for, I think, most of Obama's, if not all of Obama's term in office.
Yeah.
The last 8 years. If we get Trump and Congress remains Republican, they're going to legislate the fucking, goodbye marijuana, goodbye abortion, goodbye gay rights, goodbye all of that. It's all going to go back to the way, goodbye universal health care, goodbye all of that. It's all going to go to shit. That could start happening as early as next year. It's going to go to shit in a major way because conservatives have been laying in wait, waiting for their time. And
we can blame that on both the right and the left because they put us in this position where they gave us two horrible options.
Yeah, I was going to say Hillary isn't any better of a choice than. And the way I describe our government to people is you have the left, the Democrats work for big government. So their job is to say, we need a new committee that oversees sharpening pencils. The committee chairman is going to get paid $800,000 a year with another $400,000 a year bonus, access to a private jet, and 6 months of paid vacation every year. And he's going to make sure that all the pencils get sharpened properly. That's the Democrats. That's what Hillary Clinton represents. She represents big, corrupt government that takes all of our money and spends it on ridiculous, frivolous things and make themselves rich. They make themselves, I'm from Illinois, and Chicago politicians are some of the fucking worst, and that's where Obama came from. It's Democratic politicians, and they're awful. They're just awful. They're awful people. They're awful and corrupt, and they get into power and they take money and they just balloon the government. Illinois is broke. Illinois is a state that's in bankruptcy because the bureaucracy has stolen all of the money. Mm-hmm. And that's what the left represents. That's what the Democrats represent. And then the right, they represent big business. They represent the people who say, people like Donald Trump, who say, well, my business is a corporation. A corporation is an entity, and that entity, is exempt from this and that. We've been talking this week in politics about how he hasn't ever paid fucking income tax. And that's corporate America doesn't pay income tax. Who was it? It was some corporation, some giant corporation. It was just revealed. I forget which one it was. Some big corporation was revealed to have never paid income tax. The corporate entities don't pay taxes any more than rich people do, and so we have that's our political system. We have one side that represents growing government as big as it can to get rich, and the other side that's growing private businesses to get as rich as they can. And zero people in American government represent working class people. There is no one there representing working class people. There are people on the left representing big government and people on the right representing big business. Everybody trying to get rich. None of them represent us.
It would be helpful if we had a independent candidate, a competent one, that we can look at, because I think more now than ever before, American voters would be more willing to go with the Green Party. Just because of these options we've been given. But we don't have them. We've been given a terrible option. I think that there's such a growing group of people that just want to be libertarian so fucking bad, but our fucking libertarian candidate is just a failed Republican douchebag. Mm-hmm. Gary Johnson is a fucking idiot. I listened to him on the Joe Rogan podcast for 3 hours. This motherfucker has no answer to any question. If you challenge him on any of his views, his answer is he's nobody. He's a Republican in a fucking libertarian suit. He's nobody. He's nobody to get behind. He's nobody to fucking vote for. There's a lot of people I know that are going to vote for him symbolically. I voted for Ron Paul symbolically both times he ran. When he ran against Obama both times, and neither time was he on the ballot.
I had to write him in both times and quote-unquote waste my vote, but it was a symbolic gesture to show that I don't support big government and I don't support big corporations either. And, I guess I'm going to vote for this fucking guy, but he's not doing anything to, like, raise awareness about libertarian values. He really isn't. He's just a fucking Republican douchebag.
No, and the more disenfranchised Democrats you get are probably going to vote for Trump just out of spite.
Yeah,
and that's not going to be
really bad idea.
That's not really
bad idea.
Neither choice is going to be good for us as American people, not us middle class folk. It's not going to be good for us. These people can't relate to us in any way. I mean, Trump may be good because he is a job creator and a businessman. He's not like a politician. But at the same point, that means he also does not know how Washington works. I can't trust him to be a good politician. Hillary, on the other hand, won't release just transcripts of what she promised Wall Street. Just be honest with us. What did you tell them you were going to do if you get in an office? Because you've sold us a bunch of bullshit that we can't believe. But what did you sell them that you will do for them because they can pay you?
Right.
Just be fucking honest with us, and you might gain voters. But the more you shuck and jive and play the shell game, you're going to drive people away and choose an even worse option.
Yeah, what it comes down to is when you get put in a situation like this, it's most people are just not going to vote. It's just going to be some people are saying it's going to be a record turnout. I think it's going to be the opposite. Maybe I'm totally wrong about that, but I think it's just going to be a bunch of people that are just they don't have a good nobody's going to go vote for somebody they don't like on either side. And you can say you will get that percentage of people that go out and hate vote to try to keep the other person from winning. Voting to keep someone out as opposed to voting to put someone in. But I think most people are just disenfranchised. They're just going to stay home. And the people who do go and do vote are the people who benefit from big business and the people who benefit from big government. And those are the people that shape our policies, and those are the people who shape our culture. Are rich people. That's just what it comes down to. The only real true divide in this country and Western culture in general, I think, is rich versus poor. I don't think that black versus white matters. I don't think that men versus women matters. I don't think that I think those are manufactured by the crazy left. I think the real true challenge is to bridge the gap between rich and poor.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's one of the things that kept me, or kind of moved me out of being a Republican when I was in my early 20s, when Enron happened, and I wrote 6 papers on Enron for college. And the more I looked at them, like, well, the Republicans didn't seem to give a shit that this was going on. It wasn't until the Democrats came into power and said, wait, why are we having rolling blackouts when you have a surplus of power in California? Why is no one looking into it? But that was because Republicans are big business.
Love. There's actually a really good documentary that you can find on YouTube called The Corporation. And it's basically a bunch of Republicans that sit in a room and say, well, there's a committee, and no one individual makes these decisions, and rivers get polluted, and there's rolling blackouts, and communities become smog infested because, committees have to vote for what's best for business, and it's no individual at fault here, and nobody takes the blame. These giant entities are headless. They don't have the only driving force. You have to think of corporations like giant monsters we've created, giant invisible monsters that roam this planet, and we are constantly feeding them profit. We feed them profit, and no one individual controls that. The CEOs come and go. The chairman, the people who sit on the committees at the tops of these corporations come and go. They're not. Pepsi-Cola isn't a thing any one person owns. It's this giant. Pepsi is a giant entity, and we consume its product, and then we feed it profit. And Pepsi-Cola will always make decisions that benefit it financially, and it doesn't have anyone at the top that makes these decisions. And I don't say that to be an apologist for why these terrible things happen. I say it as a word of caution that we have headless, invisible monsters destroying our planet, and we have to get rid of them. I believe capitalism will go down in history 500 or 1,000 years from now. Humanity will look back at capitalism with the same disdain that we look at fascism and that we look at communism. because capitalism doesn't require democracy. People believe that capitalism requires democracy, that capitalism is some kind of bastion for freedom. It absolutely isn't. Capitalism is flourishing in communist China. Capitalism is a terrible thing. To always chase profits and to create these giant invisible monsters that eat profits is bad for our planet. It's bad for humanity. The corporations don't have morals. They can't. They're not real, but they shape policy, and they affect the environment. They affect how you live and where you live, and how well, and they affect quality of life. Yet they have no morality. That's
and
scary.
we put them in such a position where if we were to go after major corporations, if they were to start to shutter, so many people would lose their jobs, and then
we saw that in 2007.
Yep. And
we saw that
we looked
in 2007.
But still, no one was held accountable. That amazed
Zero.
me. I lost my job because of the recession, and I sat unemployed on my laptop trying to find a job and watching the news and being like, well, why? We know who's accountable for these practices. Why are we not doing anything?
Right.
And it was just, it's the way. I mean, these banks are too big to fail. We had to bail them out. Like, I know people that can't feed their kids right now because they lost their job. So you're telling me that these banks deserve the special treatment, and these people have to eke by with $250 or $500 every other week, for only a few months, and then they're fucked.
You have one person in politics who had the answer, and that guy's name was Ron Paul. And what's funny is they wouldn't let him in on the debates. They called him a crazy person. They called him an old crazy man. They said that they didn't believe any of his policies, blah, blah, blah. And then when the fucking recession happened in 2007, the number one person that those fucking cable news stations called to ask what was happening was economist, PhD, Dr. Ron Paul, to ask him to make sense of the recession for them. That motherfucker could have, by now, completely reshaped what it's like to live in Western culture. But we never gave him an opportunity, And in his opinion, we have to let it all fail. We have to let the economy completely crash and burn, and then rebuild it from scratch. That's the world's leading economist tells us that. That every time we prop these corporations back up when they're quote unquote too big to fail and we bail them out, we're only adding to the bubble. We're only adding to the problem. And the crash is going to be that much worse, and that many more people's lives are going to suffer the longer we perpetuate this. We have to cut the legs out from under it. We have to kill these monsters, these headless, invisible corporations. We have to kill them now, and then we have to recover. We have to dig in and prepare for hard life. He likes to say for about 10 years. If we were able to give up 10 years as a culture, and imagine the SJWs, imagine these kind of people having to live in poverty for 10 years. They couldn't do it. They couldn't exist. But
without their comforts, no.
If we were able to do that, as a culture we were able to suffer for 10 years, we could recover and build a livable, civilized Western world that didn't rely on insane levels of capitalism that we rely on today, and it would bridge the gap between the rich and the poor, and it would create a distribution of wealth that we haven't seen in a couple hundred years in Western civilization.
The problem is we're never going to do that. We're never going to make that kind of a shift unless it happens completely out of our control. Absolutely,
yeah. It's going to take a market crash bigger than 2007, or it's going to take nuclear war. It's going to take crazy. The war is great to restabilize economies. Unfortunately, if we were to go, not the wars we've been fighting for the last almost 20 years, those wars, it does nothing but suck. What it did was it made the warmongering motherfuckers like Dick Cheney, billionaires on top of their already millionaire status. But real world wars that bring manufacturing back, because you have to manufacture tanks and you have to manufacture bombs and bullets and guns, that kind of stuff can really reinvigorate an economy. Unfortunately, that's what we've always relied on. Which is, again, think about how fucked that is. Like, if we want to kill the giant monsters, we have to fucking kill each other. We have to have giant wars in order to restabilize economies. Like, it's just, This world is really fucked.
It's
really fucked. And the thing that frustrates me is I used to go to comic books and monster movies and heavy metal music and stuff like that. That was my release from this world, because we can sit here for the next 5 more hours and talk about all these things in detail, in nuanced detail, about what's wrong with our country. But like you just said, what's wrong with Western culture in general. But like you just said, we're never going to do that consciously. We're never going to elect a leader that's going to say, okay, everybody, tighten up your belts a couple notches because you ain't eating for the next 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
We're never going to do that consciously. So I used to try to escape this shitty fucking reality by escaping into fiction, into comic books, into music, into movies. And that's, where this conversation started with the fucking SJWs. They only care about Sansa's station in fucking Game of Thrones, and that her rape, made her less of a person, less of a character, and people were wanting to boycott Game of Thrones because of something that happened to a fictional character. And this is the kind of stuff, I used to be able to escape to this stuff. I used to be able to read comic books, and now comic books are shoving manufactured virtue signaling diversity in my face, making all the male superheroes either female or minorities, just to spite the fact that they weren't that before. In this real manufactured, just like I said, virtue signaling, just this sanctimonious, empty, hollow act to try to gain more readers by alienating the readers they already had, by alienating people like me who are just going, look, I love characters like Storm and Rogue and characters like Jean Grey. Jean Grey is one of the most powerful mutants in the X-Men universe. You don't need to turn Thor into a woman for me to respect powerful women. I already respected the powerful women that already exist in comic books. Why can't you make Jean Grey, a central figure, or Storm a central figure in your comic books? Why do you have to, well, as far as that goes, we could get into the entertainment industry and again talk for hours and hours about it, but Marvel has basically destroyed the X-Men because Fox owns the movie rights. But those are just characters off the top of my head that are female and super powerful, and characters that I loved growing up. And I loved Rogue storylines. She was sexy as fuck. I loved her little southern accent that she had, and she was one of the she could beat everybody's ass on the X-Men. And if you touched her, you got your power sucked away. I mean, she's a bad motherfucker. And now I just get this smug cultural superiority pushed in my face, even when I'm trying to retreat away from the shitty fucking reality that this world has produced. Now I there's no escape. There's nowhere to go now where I don't have this some outrage shoved in my face and being told that being white and male and straight makes me a bad person, no matter where I try to turn.
But I think in the same sense as these things are being stripped away from us and made more for a very small group, we're getting more people on YouTube that are coming out and counteracting this stuff by producing content that is venting our frustrations for us. If we look at like Armored Skeptic and Chris Raygun and Shoe on Head and The Amazing Atheist, these people are adamantly battling against this cultural movement and doing it in an entertaining way. So we're starting to get at least a smidgen of something that we can relate to again. But
we do, but in a sense, though, I don't want to spend all my time worrying about. And this is the same thing that happened to me. I told you when I was a kid, and I would start shit with Christians at school. I would go into the meetings and argue with them and debate with them. It eventually got to the point where that was all I did with my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a very unhappy person. Like, it never made me. I never left those meetings happy. I never felt like, oh fuck yeah, I showed those motherfuckers what a good day this was. Like, I was just mad, and I was trying to vent my frustration. Like when I listen to Dave Rubin or Milo, it doesn't make me feel better. It just makes me feel like, oh well, at least somebody else has some fucking common sense on this fucking planet. But it doesn't make me feel good. It doesn't make me feel happy. It just makes me feel like I'm wasting my life fighting for my ability to live a normal life.
I can understand that. I mean, I
feel
can
like
totally
I'm on the
see
defensive all the time.
It's you watch them, you get that entertainment factor. You're saying like, yeah, at least someone sees through this bullshit. But until we actually start talking about it, unless both sides start having a debate, it's not going to go anywhere. I could sit there and I can say Anita Sarkeesian is a one-note hack that doesn't know what she's talking about. But until that person actually openly debates the bullshit they're spewing, it's not going to matter. Right. Until these ideas are actively brought down in a debate where it's not just one side like shouting an argument and then someone a month later shouting back a retort. These ideas need to be debated openly and honestly. And that's not going to happen because that just doesn't happen anymore. You're just going to have YouTube videos going back and forth, and each of us are going to get what we need out of it, and that's going to be it.
And for guys like me, I just want my music back. I want my movies back. I want my comic books back. I want my fiction back. I just want to be able to sit back and relax. And I'm not going to see the end of capitalism in my lifetime. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to see some great transformation of Western culture in my lifetime. So what I would like to do is I would like to just be able to be happy. I would like to be able to write my books and watch my movies and read my comic books and just escape from the terrible reality that I live in. I'm not an activist and I'm not a politician. I don't ever plan on being in politics, and I don't want to have to have these conversations all the time. I just want to be. I want to be free to enjoy my art, both creating it, both producing it, and as a consumer, without having to deal with all this political and social nonsense. That's what I want back. I just want people to shut up about it. Just shut up and let each other live.
I'm concerned about like the kind of environment that my daughter's going to come into. She's only 2 now, but then I don't know with the way this movement's going to be going. If the way I teach her to be, you should openly express your ideas. You should not be ashamed of your ideas, even if they're unpopular. If she goes into a public school and she says, "Well, I disagree with this popular sentiment," then
she's going to get sent home, and you're going to be lectured by the principal, and you're going to get DCFS called on you for giving your child, intolerant beliefs. And I see my friends going through it right now. Friends that have 8, 9, 10-year-olds that have to go to school and be lectured because their 8-year-old said the black kid hit me. And now my friend is in a big meeting with the principal going, "Why is your kid calling this other kid black? Are you teaching him, are you teaching him to be racist?" He was like, "It was the black kid that hit him." It's not racist to say.
I mean, if the kid doesn't know that other kid's name, then the easiest identifier
is just the color of his skin. That's all it is. It's not a big deal until someone makes it a big deal. I'm the fat guy, right? If you don't know me and I hit you and you go to tell somebody, you're going to say the fat guy, that guy right there, the fattest dude standing over there is the one that hit me. I'm not falling to my knees saying, "Why are you oppressing me, you ableist, you fat shamer?" No, it's because I eat a lot of fucking pizza, man.
When I filed a police report before for something that happened in my neighborhood, the cops are asking me these detailed things. What color was their skin? How tall were they? Were they fat? Were they thin?
I say the same thing when I go to the doctor. When I go to the doctor, there are giant fucking pictures on the wall that say if you're a man over 50, you need to get a prostate exam, immediately. If you're a woman over 60 and things like that, you need to do this kind of stuff. Like gender matters in certain circumstances. And what you're talking about, like whenever you're trying to identify someone physically, it matters. It matters what someone looks like when you're trying to create a physical identifier. You can't just say the mean guy, that one. You have to produce words that signify physical features.
Imagine if you had to use all the pronouns and everything that certain SJW trans people want you to use to identify a person, and you don't know these specific things like. It could have been a Zim or a Zer or a they. I don't know. I can't. Was it a guy or was it a girl?
There was a point in time, brother, where I wanted to be a teacher. And I do freelance teach. I do freelance creative writing courses through my website, kevinthestrange.com. Let's throw that plug in there for the first time.
Yeah, let's finally get back to the thing we started to talk about.
but I really have a passion for teaching. I have a passion for teaching creative writing and how to create characters and tell stories and, you know, come up with awesome plots. And I can teach for hours and hours. I can have conversations longer than this just about writing and how to write and the different nuances about, you know, deconstructing the method of fiction and all that stuff. But I could never see myself on a college campus having to speak in those terms, having to speak in such a confined parameter of ideas. There's no way I couldn't effectively teach these kids anything if I'm restricted to such a tiny amount of ideas and words that I can use, so I don't trigger anybody or so I don't identify anybody as what they are. There's no way I could do it. So I stay out of mainstream academia, even though I have a strong passion for it. I stay out of it because of the culture I live in. It's just I was born at the wrong time. I grew up in the wrong era, and I just can't do it. I can't, as a white straight dude, I can't walk into a college campus and teach a class. I would not last a semester without being fired. There's no way I could do it.
Even though we write two totally different things, I write from a journalistic perspective and you write fiction. The reason I got into journalism was because of Hunter H. Thompson. I enjoy gonzo writing, but there is no way that I could pen a gonzo piece and not be torn to shreds if it were to be exposed to a certain group of SJWs. Right. I would use the wrong terms everywhere. It would be completely torn apart if I wrote a piece about a woman and I commented on her body. I'd be torn apart. I would be labeled as a sexist. Like, these are parts of the story. This is gonzo journalism. It is made to provoke you. If you don't want to be provoked, then stay away from everything.
Right.
Don't pick up Oliver Twist. Don't pick up Frankenstein. Don't pick up any book.
Don't pick up anything. Don't pick up anything, because there are ideas that will challenge your beliefs, because that's what art is. Art exists to challenge the pervasive beliefs, and that's what I asked on social media a couple of weeks back or last week or something. I said, what is provocative? You know, what is truly provocative in this culture? Because the culture of SJWs, they very much act like conservative beliefs are still the prevailing belief system of this country, that quote unquote the white patriarchy is still in control of the country. What they have failed to realize is they won. Their moral superiority is what controls this country, is what pushes. You know, you have public school systems that are going to put in trans bathrooms, genderless bathrooms now, millions of dollars worth of bathrooms going to be put in. You know, they control policy. They are truly what is counterculture when the counterculture is the prevailing culture. And what happens is you get guys like us who we are creating the art that challenges their beliefs, because they are the moral majority now. They pretend that it's still the 1990s and that the Christian right is still somehow controlling them in some way, that somehow still has a grip on their lives in any way, shape, or form. They have none. These people, the crazy regressive left, are the ones that are in the majority now. And so I asked, on social media, what is provocative and counterculture to a counterculture to a counterculture that wins? Like, what am I? And artistically, I have to challenge these beliefs in my writing. The way I challenge these beliefs, though, is how do I write the opposite of what's happening in our culture today? I clearly don't write from a conservative perspective. I clearly don't write, bigoted, racist characters that oppress women and minorities. I don't write Klansmen who win or anything like that. What I do to challenge beliefs is I create true egalitarianism. My fiction, my writing contains people of many different cultures and strong females and strong males together that work together, because what what the right doesn't want you to believe and what the left doesn't want you to believe. You know, you have the crazy chauvinistic Christian right who believe women's place is barefoot pregnant in the kitchen, and then you have the crazy left who believe that women should grow out their armpit hair and have blue hair and call everyone sexist and believe all sex is rape, and yes means no and no means no and all this stuff. What truly challenges those beliefs is to create an egalitarian world, and that's what I write in my fiction. When I write my books, I have strong male characters and strong female characters that work together, and the strengths of the feminine and the strengths of the masculine come together to create a more powerful, unit to overcome evil from both sides. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's the kind of stuff I write. I always write from an egalitarian perspective, and that's what I think that's the kind of art that I think challenges all of this. Because again, it's not shouting down beliefs that make change. It's encouraging positive beliefs. And I believe that if I put egalitarian art into the world, that people will find it and say, you know what? Yeah, men and women are equal, and gay and straight people are equal, and black and white people are equal, and we can all work together against the greater evil, that is capitalism and corporations and rich people and everything we've been talking about. We can all come together and put aside our differences and fight the real evils of the world. And so that's how I challenge. That's how I challenge this reality artistically in my fiction.
And in art, by treating everyone equally in an egalitarian setting, everyone can be the hero. Everyone can be the victim. You're not going to put one above the other and say, I can never write this specific character as a victim because of X, Y, or Z, gender, skin color, religious beliefs. No, everyone can be a victim. Everyone can be a hero. Everyone can be neutral.
One of the things that I do in my latest novel, it's called Texas Chainsaw Mantis. It's about a world where genetically modified praying mantises that have grown to the size of humans have wiped out the human population but kept human culture intact. So it's praying mantises that drive cars and live in houses and have jobs. And we follow a teacher, a school teacher, an English teacher named Matthew, and he lives with his wife named Zelda, who is a politician, and she ends up trying to kill him and frame him for trying to rape her in order to gain sympathy as a politician, but she's trying to win a congressional seat as a giant praying mantis. And what I do in the story is I take Matthew, and at different points throughout the story, Matthew is the victim, Matthew's the hero, and Matthew's the villain. And I like to do this in my fiction. A lot of my books are written like this, where one character is so multifaceted, so multidimensional, because that's what we as human beings really, truly are. And I like to challenge readers, because we really want what we expect is we expect a clear-cut hero and a clear-cut villain and a bad guy that does all bad things and a good guy that does all good things. But what culturally, what are the characters that stick with us the most? Tony Soprano sticks with us. What's his name? Walter White sticks with us.
Yeah.
Characters like that. Characters. Why is Game of Thrones as popular as it is? Because those characters go through the changes are so nuanced. But we take a character like Jaime Lannister that goes from being the most reviled villain on the show to being a victim that we just hate to see get abused, to becoming a hero throughout the course of the show. And I like to do that. I like to I draw these multi-dimensional characters, and I challenge you as a reader, as you read this character and you get comfortable in his role as a villain, I then drop a bomb on you and create sympathy for him. And then maybe it turns out he's making the wrong choices for the right reasons. And you have to, and I challenge your judgment that you've placed on him, because he's got a really good reason for what he's doing. And I like to play with my characters in that way. And that's, like I said, in Texas Chainsaw Mantis, I actually have my character go from, it's like, again, a truly egalitarian world where the characters go from hero to villain to victim, all in the course of one book. And I take you on a crazy roller coaster ride. But the lesson that I'm really trying to teach everyone in my fiction is that we're all equal. We are all as equally full of goodness as we are of evil, and we're all as powerful as we are weak. We're all capable of being the victim of something. We're all capable of being the aggressor and the oppressor. We're all capable of loving. We're all capable of hating. We're capable of being good. We're capable of being evil. And nothing, there is no boundary to that. Men aren't better than women. Women aren't better than black people, trans people, or gay people. None of that matters. Truly, as human beings, none of that matters. We're all the same.
I think it's that complexity in your characters, which I kind of see spill over into your viewpoints about comic book movies as well. Because you really don't have that much love for the Marvel Universe because it is kind of stagnant in that this person's good, this person's evil. That's the way it is.
Absolutely.
But then when we look at Batman versus Superman, it's, even though it is a badly told story from an editing standpoint, it still is much more complex in its tones than most Marvel movies are.
Yeah, one of the things that it does is it expects you to, what Batman versus Superman does is it expects you to accept Batman as a villain right out of the gate. Mm-hmm. It doesn't give you a reason why. It doesn't really clearly tell you why Batman is in the shape that he's in. It just wants you to know that he is. And people just, and the thing that separates people with Batman versus Superman is really divisive. And one of the things that separates people who love it or hate it is you either walk into that situation buying where Batman is in his life, or you don't, or you expected more, or you say, well, I don't understand. Why is Batman such a bad guy? Why is the name Martha? I'll just snap him out of it. If you gave a fuck, if you really invested into the character, and that's the flaw. The big flaw of the movie is it expects you to invest emotionally into the characters without being given the, connecting the dots for you. You kind of
an hour of build-up.
Yeah, you kind of have to do work. Mm-hmm. to get to where you're at right at the beginning of the story with these characters, and you either buy it or you don't. You either accept it or you don't. And Marvel movies, you absolutely get every 3 minutes there's a Tony Stark joke, and everybody's going to be okay at the end, and everything is going to work out just fine because they're kids movies and they're making them for kids. Nothing felt to me. Nothing felt like it was talking down to me and treating me like a child more than that airport scene in Captain America: Civil War. People rave about how great that scene was, and from an editing standpoint, from a story standpoint, it's told really well. Characters, we find out things about characters like Ant-Man that we have never seen before. We have character arcs for characters like Spider-Man and Captain America. We have, everybody gets a character arc in that little scene, and that scene's maybe 10 or 15 minutes long, and we get a lot of complex changes for our characters, and we see a lot of cool things we've never seen before. So from a storyline standpoint, it's done very well from a story standpoint, but what actually happens is nothing. Nothing actually happens. Nothing's at stake. No one's hurt. Everyone's fine, and it's told like a children's comic book, or cartoon. It's a story that's being told at about a 13-year-old level.
And the only person that truly,
and we have 30-year-olds. Go ahead.
The only person that truly is hurt or has some stakes is Rhodes, but up until that point, you didn't really get a whole lot of, even in the past movies, there's not a whole lot of Rhodes. So you're not that emotionally connected to him, and he is the one that suffers the greatest damage during that fight. If you had done that to Tony Stark, or if you'd done that to maybe Black Widow, or even Spider-Man, because he has such a connection to fans, if you had put them in actual peril or actually done something to them that might not be reversible, you would have had a bigger emotional outcome of that scene other than it is a good popcorn scene.
Right. Well, and it's just a popcorn movie. When it comes down to it, is that these are movies told from the emotional perspective of a 13-year-old to 30-year-olds who are doing backflips talking about how great these movies are, but they're really not challenging people. Marvel movies don't challenge anybody. They don't challenge anything. The last Marvel movie I felt like that challenged me as a viewer was Winter Soldier. It's Captain America: Winter Soldier. I thought that was a beautifully told movie because it's constantly surprising the audience, and it tells the story of Captain America seeing that the American government has encroached on our freedoms and privacy, and he's taking a stand to fight back against it. I thought that Winter Soldier was a great allegory to the problems that we face in the culture we live in today, but that was the last Marvel movie that really challenged anything. Everything else has just been, they're really fan service, crowd pleasers from the emotional perspective of a 13-year-old.
But then we get better storytelling when we look at the Netflix series. The Jessica Jones notwithstanding, because I personally didn't care for that, but like Daredevil, you see that not everything is just all fighting. There is a lot of character building. There's a lot at stake for these characters because more or less they're regular people living in a pretty tough city, and they have something to lose. Whereas your heroes are not going to die in a Marvel movie. You're not going to suffer that kind of great loss. But in these Netflix series, you could have a major death that could affect the series.
And you will too. You'll see some of these characters they're definitely gonna die. I love Daredevil, and I think the only way you can not love Daredevil is if you don't like ninjas. There's a lot of ninjas. If there's any criticism you can have for that series, it's that there's a lot of ninja fighting. But especially season 2 with the Punisher, that is such a nuanced character. That character is so cool, so complex, and comes at you from so many different emotional angles. Daredevil's great. Jessica Jones is a big fucking piece of shit. I don't think I made it through 4 episodes before I turned that off because that's just a pandering. That just panders to the regressive left. That show is just fuck that show. It
was just a big ball of snark. I watched all the way through.
I
love David Tennant.
Super snarky.
Yeah,
I've heard the same thing. I never even got to that guy. I never even got to him. But I was told that he was just kind of this lovesick stalker that just represented sort of all of the patriarchal ideology that holds feminists back and all this stuff. So I was like, well, I definitely don't need to watch that.
He does sum up quite a bit of that, as he is a control freak and he does not want to lose his object, which is Jessica Jones or any woman that he finds attractive. It just could have been told so much better. I just couldn't get into her character because if you hit me with so much snark, so much millennial snark, even as a millennial, I'm going to get turned off from that because I can't find you redeemable as a person, no matter what your background is, if you're constantly just being a bitch.
Well, that's what I kind of, after 3 episodes, I was like, okay, so this girl slams into a room with a look on her face that looks like she's smelling farts. She yells at all the characters to give them something, and then they basically just sit there wide-eyed, let her yell at them, and then say, okay, fine, I'll give you what you want, and then she gets it. And that's basically how she storms through the first 3 episodes, and I'm like, I fucking hate this bitch. This bitch can fucking die for all I can do. That'll be the quote from this interview. Kevin Strange says Jessica Jones could die for all.
But then there were SJWs that took issue with Jessica Jones, saying that she was.
There are SJWs that took issue with Ghostbusters for making racial jokes. That's the thing, is they constantly eat their own tail. They constantly go after themselves. Literally any time the entertainment industry has tried to cater to SJW sensibilities, they've been slapped in the mouth. Every fucking time. Because SJWs don't like anything. They're not there to they're not here to change things for the better. Milo likes to talk, likes to say that they're like puppies chasing cars. They have no idea what they would do if they caught it. They're just trying to create dissent. They're just trying to create cultural dissent, and you can't cater to them. You can't buy them. You can't create a product that they'll support, because their whole ideology is to not support things. It's to disrupt things.
It's to always have a fight where you, like we said before, to have the moral high ground, regardless of how stupid the fight is or how nonsensical your moral high ground is based on the subject matter. It's always to have a fight where you're the hero. And that's going to spill over, which I worry about as a content creator on YouTube, is it's going to spill over into that with that whole YouTube heroes thing, is you're going to have a bunch of these moralists get on there and say, well, I don't like what this person says, even though it's not really titillizing in any way. I just don't like their opinion differs from mine. Flag.
Wow. What Joe Rogan likes to say all the time in a different context is you can't beat the internet. The internet will always win. Here's what YouTube is going to face. YouTube hasn't always fucking existed. YouTube has really only been around for about 10 years.
Yep.
And YouTube today controls the video content on the internet for sure. But for sure, if you start censoring popular shows and popular shows start quitting because and I'm talking popular shows as in millions of views a day type fucking shows, if they start trying to look elsewhere, there will be elsewhere. someone will come along, and there will be, wherever there is a demand, you will find an alternative. And an alternative to YouTube will pop up, and those very, very popular celebrity YouTubers will draw an audience to whatever platform comes along that creates, again, like Snapchat is doing, whatever the next wave of social media is for video sharing. And Snapchat does do video, and all those personalities do use Snapchat to drive people over to their YouTube. But so far, people haven't been able to monetize Snapchat. So whatever comes next is going to be, mark my words, it's going to be the kind of platform that absolutely restricts people from being able to report the content. It will be the type of platform that has freedom of expression, has true freedom of expression, because the YouTube is doing what all of these corporations try to do. They try to cater to the SJW crowd, and they will get slapped in the face. And YouTube will go out of fucking business, and whatever comes next will flourish, because they've created, like it or not, YouTube has created celebrities that are bigger than YouTube. People follow these people. Joe Rogan's show might get more views on YouTube than anywhere else, but he's still Joe Rogan. People don't care what the platform is that they're consuming him on. They could give a shit. YouTube, I guess what I'm saying is YouTube has no brand loyalty. Nobody gives a fuck about YouTube. The only reason they go there is because that's where their celebrities are. As soon as their celebrities move off to somewhere else, everyone will move off to somewhere else. And just like, nobody had any fucking loyalty for the MySpace brand. As soon as Facebook offered a better alternative to social media than MySpace, people abandoned it, and it's gone forever. MySpace will never be a brand again that will have any value, and YouTube will go the same. YouTube will go the way of MySpace if they really do start enforcing those policies, and you really start to see these huge channels that bring in hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. If you start seeing them get demonetized, you'll see the end of YouTube. That's my opinion.
I don't doubt. I'm pretty sure people would just start going to Blip or to any of these other alternatives, even though these places like Blip or Vimeo are pretty good, but they just don't offer the same kind of streamlined experience for content creators. But if
they sure will when all that advertising revenue comes in, when everyone comes over there and they have the money to spend to do it. YouTube didn't. When YouTube started, you couldn't upload more than fucking like 50 megabytes, and your shit couldn't be longer than 10 minutes. I was there for the launch of YouTube. When I first started making movies in the mid 2000s, I made my first short film in 2003. There was no fucking YouTube. I had to create this is what you had to do. You had to visit my website. My website had a thumbnail picture of the movie, and then under that it said download Windows Movie Player. Here. Once you've downloaded Windows Movie Player, right-click and save as my movie file, and then play it in the Windows Movie Player. That's what you had to do to watch my short films when I first started making movies. And then YouTube came along, and YouTube was a piece of shit. The uploads would fail. You would sit there for an hour trying to upload a fucking 3-minute trailer for your movie, and it would fail and fail and fail. And you had to fight YouTube to make it work when YouTube first came around. And then they've got millions and millions of dollars that come in through advertising now. And Blip or Vimeo or any of the other companies, same thing will happen with them. As soon as the users come and the advertising money comes in, they'll get better. Yeah,
like you said, there's no brand loyalty. If I can make the same amount of money on any other site that I could with YouTube, and the uploading process is still the same, then that's where I would go. It doesn't matter to me. The only reason I stay on YouTube is because I've got a relatively small user base or subscriber base, and I haven't really focused on content until just recently. But if I don't get a very good experience when I do start creating more content, then I will go elsewhere. I don't owe YouTube anything. YouTube doesn't owe me anything. I can just leave anytime I want. And if they're going to start censoring people that don't have popular opinions, well, then, fuck it, I'll go anywhere else. And everyone else will too. I mean, the internet doesn't have – no one on the internet really has a monopoly on where people can post their creative content. It's not AOL days. It's not GeoCities. And that's the difference between having
that's the difference between having a big corporation like Lowe's try to create moral policy. It's hard for there to be an alternative to Lowe's. It's hard to spring up and create a giant corporation that caters to the people that shop there, that meet consumer needs the way Lowe's does. It is not hard for a software company to come up with video technology that rivals YouTube. It's just not the same type of thing. It's not the same level of commitment required. And the thing is, there are a lot of low level, like you just named two, and there's many more video streaming sites that are already set up and already have the interface, that already have the structure to an interface to be the alternative to YouTube. They're just sort of waiting for YouTube to do something like this and to outrage and piss off the celebrities that it's created. You know, that's the truth is YouTube has created celebrities, and people are going to go wherever they go.
I would love to see a company like Apple.
Lowe's creates. Yeah.
A company like Apple to offer that kind of YouTube format for its users. And right there, you would have a number of people, a number of Apple enthusiasts would just jump right on and be like, oh, I can just do this here, and it's all part of this ecosystem, right. And you're not going to fuck with me? Fine, I'll jump ship like that. And then you would, there you go. There is your next, for the next 10 years, your next thing.
And you kind of got three, right? Three giant. You've got Amazon, you've got Apple, and you've got Google. And Google owns YouTube. But Amazon and Apple could very well come in and fill that void. The problem is I don't trust any of those giant fucking corporations. I don't trust Apple any more than I trust anyone else to not do the same thing. You know, I don't trust Apple to create privacy. I really like, for some reason I keep going back to these fucking Snapchat guys. I don't have any reason to trust them either, but they did create a platform that's literally the only reason it exists is to give me the peace of mind that the content that I share is private. And I want to see someone new come along with video sharing technology that really cares about privacy, that really cares about keeping its users safe from that kind of moral outrage that is created in those other areas, that keeps users safe from the lynch mobs of the social media police, the thought police for our thought crimes, for having opinions, our terrible opinions that are just going to corrupt the youth of America and create bigots and racists the world over.
I'd love to see Periscope do something like that, where letting you upload pre-created content, and then like the first run of it, you can have a live discussion with your audience where they can send in their hearts or whatever and live comment with you, and you can talk back to them during the first run of your content. I think that would be a great idea for people to actively engage their audience right away.
I was big on Periscope for a while, but Facebook came right in, absolutely stole that technology, and Periscope, I think, is suffering pretty badly because of that. Because people that I used to follow on Periscope go live on Facebook now, which is terrible. Because I fucking hate Facebook with a passion.
You're on it just as much as I am.
Yeah, I do my best to try to stay away from it, but it really is I fell into the trap everyone else did. I used to have forums on my website. I used to bring the Kevin Strange experience was on a central area of the internet. And if you wanted to experience things my way, you either met me at a convention or you hung out on my website. And I got away from it like everybody else did. When social media got big, people got lazy and everybody hung out on Facebook and Twitter. And I sort of let my website fall away, but I've recently been really trying to rebuild my website in such a way that I can draw my fans, not everybody. I'm not trying to create a social media platform, not at all. But I am trying to create an environment for my fans to come. I'm going to rebuild an internet forum, and if you come to kevinthestrange.com, you will be able to interact socially with other like-minded people and fans to talk about cool movies and monster movies and comics and my books and my movies and stuff in an environment where you're safe to express yourself freely, and you don't have to worry about people throwing you out or publicly shaming you for your beliefs. As long as you're cool and you don't start fights, you can talk about anything you want to. And I want to draw my people back into my world. in a way that I've gotten away from. And sitting on Facebook, it's just not. Facebook is just a terrible place. It's just a place for public shaming and outrage links, and nobody reads anything anybody says. We just yell at each other. And today there's a fucking meme going around. It's a troll meme. It's got a bunch of different. You posted this in a comment, but someone else posted it to my page earlier that day. It's a bunch of different little kids in Halloween costumes, and it's a meme that says, don't bring your bigotry to my front door. I'll ask you to leave. Stay off my property with your bigotry or whatever. And it's got examples. It's got like a Superman costume and a Disney princess costume. It's like ableism, sexism, da 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 da. People are really sharing that like in earnesty. Like they're really going to kick a 3-year-old off of their porch that's wearing a Disney princess costume. Get the fuck out of here. And they're posting it with sincerity, and they're calling each other sexist and racist in the comments. And it's just, I can't be there, dude. I can't hang out there. I've wasted enough time hanging out on that stupid social network platform, and I'm going to try to bring people back to my world where sanity and common sense and true egalitarian equality reign supreme.